the presentation from the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, who is presented tonight by Chris Meltzer, Senior Communications Officer in Ethiopia, where he arrived in late 2020. The access to the Tigray area, both with respect to information about the current situation and for the humanitarian situation, is precarious, as Paul outlined. UNHCR's mandate includes not only humanitarian assistance to refugees, but also the protection of refugees' rights. The funding of UN emergency assistance, as the one in Tigray, and this is a major challenge to all UN operations in any situation, depend on the support of donor countries, where EU countries are very strong donors to UNHCR, for instance, and even WFP. The coordination of new humanitarian situations is done through the UN Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. This is so as to ensure that the funding goes to the main priorities, so that together UN can make a significant impact into the situation. With these few words, I say over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Taxa Miket. I don't like these kinds of webinars. It's always better to see someone in person, but at least so we can see each other, although we are some couple of thousand miles away, and also with COVID. Actually, I would like to wear my mask. I'm not sure if someone can see my mask. We got this from a refugee in beautiful African patterns, and even with the UNHCR logo, she made that. That was not a refugee in or from Tigray, but a refugee from the Congo, because Ethiopia hosts, like it was mentioned already, for decades refugees, 800,000, and the Eritreans are not the biggest group. The biggest group are refugees from South Sudan and then from Somalia, and on third position there are the refugees from Eritrea. They are in the north of the country, obviously, and so Nestatak. I have here a little map, and you see the 4 refugee camps there are in the Tigray region. There is Mayaini and Adi Harush on the southern edge of Tigray, and Shimelba and Hitsats more in the north. And Shimelba is very close to the Eritrean border. It's only 30-35 kilometers. Hitsats also just, let's say, 55 kilometers from the border. We had registered in these 4 camps 96,000 Eritrean refugees, although not all of them lived in the camps. Many of them lived also in the cities and in the villages around, or the towns. And there are another 100,000 internal displaced persons. And again, I'm talking about the situation prior to the November. UNHCR has 90 staff members in the Tigray region. Half of them are national staff, so Ethiopians, and the other half are international staff. So since then, the situation has changed, and we have now a big number of internal displaced persons, 1.1 million. That was our planning figure. Meanwhile, 2.2 million. That was a figure that was published just last week from the government. We have right now the, let's say, official figure of the United Nations of a little less than 250,000, but everybody knows that this number will be higher. But as you can see, no one really knows how many internal displaced persons they are. What we know very well is the number of Ethiopian refugees outside of the Tigray region in Sudan. Sudan opened its borders, and the latest figure I just received a couple of hours ago was 57,120 refugees from Ethiopia who are now in refugee camps in the Sudan. And the number is still increasing, although not with that speed like we had in November and December. Nestatag? I will not talk so much actually about what you can read here itself in these things, but I would like to talk a little about my experiences, because I just was there in the north, and this was actually something special, because since early November, we had no access to the 4 refugee camps there. And I just returned from the Tigray region less than 24 hours ago, but only from the 2 southern camps. The 2 northern camps, Hitsats and Shimelba, they are still inaccessible for us. But at least we could stay in the southern camps for about a week, talk to the refugees, and assess the situation there. To give you a little overview, the 2 southern camps were not in the combat zone. That's why there are no destroyed shelters. There are no people who were killed or injured by the fightings by army or militia. But the people were actually forsaken. Because again, we had to leave the camps, and there were literally no one who could help the refugees. No NGO, no United Nations. And for many weeks, the refugees had no food. They had no water, because the pumps we have installed over the last years, they need fuel. So the refugees only took the water from the river, and I saw the river. It was not a good river. It was really not clean. But the refugees used this water for washing their clothes, for cooking, and even for drinking, because there was just no alternative. There's a little market in the refugee camp, because always you have also little stores, and they were open after a while, but the food prices skyrocketed. They doubled, told us the refugees. But there was no other way for many refugees. So they sold the few things they had just to feed their family. And many refugees left the camps. We don't know the exact figure, but we're talking about a 5-digit figure, probably, at least many thousand, maybe more than 10,000 people who left the 2 southern camps and also the 2 northern camps. Many went to Addis Ababa. A few of them went also to Sudan, so some of the Ethiopian refugees are actually Eritrean refugees. Some went to other cities, like, for example, Gondar. And the majority stayed in the camps. We talked to hundreds of refugees in the last week, and with 150 of them, we made a kind of interview. We had a questionnaire of about 50 questions, and we asked the refugees if they have anonymously 45 minutes of their time to answer some questions about their well-being, about the situation in the camps. And it was very interesting to hear the stories of the refugees. They were very willing to talk to us, again, anonymously, but they were willing to talk to us, and we found out that the infrastructure in the 2 southern camps, it's still intact. There's barely something destroyed, but on the other hand, as mentioned, no food, no water. And the stories of the about 150 refugees were very consistent. They all told us the same thing about the biggest priority. Food is important, water is important, clean water, school is important. They said they have no medical support there, no legal support. But the biggest problem, everybody said, really was the security situation. The refugees said that every night gangs of unidentified men with weapons went into the camps, looting the camps, and stealing everything what's there. On one night, they stole from the refugees 120 cell phones, taking away from the refugees the only possibility they have to contact their loved ones back home or maybe even abroad. They also shoot sometimes, and in Adi Harush, in one of the refugee camps, a child was killed, a 6-year-old boy, when he was hit by a bullet. Other refugees were attacked with axes by these gangs. And when we asked what the police did, or the army, or ARA, what is the authority for refugees, they said they weren't even there. We were totally alone. And whatever you do, please help us, give us security back. And can we have the next slide, please? Thank you so much. So what we did was just an assessment mission in the last week, because WFP could deliver food that was, of course, extremely helpful, and everybody told us how happy they were when the WFP trucks went into the camps, and they were also very happy when they saw us. But we came not with trucks yet. We came only with some Land Rovers. It was an assessment mission, because we do not have right now full access, the access we need to fulfill our mandate in the camps. In the 2 southern camps, we hope to have these access soon, to come there to reestablish again a UNHCR presence in the camps. But there's still the problem with the 2 northern camps. They are absolutely inaccessible to us. And when people are asking us, and they're asking us every day, how is the situation there? How is the situation of the refugees? How are they? We have to say, we just don't know. We have no access. We have no communication with these areas. Everybody of the UNHCR staff had to go out 2 months ago, and we have no idea how the situation is up there. What we know is that even in the best possible way, it must be terrible, because these two camps with more than 20,000 people are not only incommunicado, they are also cut off from any supply for weeks now, for 2 months now. And they are also in the war zone. So that's why we are very, very concerned about the situation, and we are pushing every day that we need the approval to go there. But until now, unfortunately, to no avail. Let me show you probably a few photos. So Nestatak, I had, and yeah, let's also switch to the next one. These are still official photos. And here's a summary of our requirements, the financial requirements we have. But also, please go to the next one. And the next one, I don't want to bore you with and the next one, and then we start. I have only 6 or 7 photos I made in the last days. So just with my phone, and I'm not good photographer, but probably you got just an impression. So these photos are still warm. They're very fresh. This is Adi Harush's refugee camp, and you see this was the first blue vest for 2 months there, and the people. Okay, you can't see it in the photo, but they were very happy to see us, and they waved at us, and they cheered actually, and it was a very, very nice feeling. Nestatak. On this photo, you see a water station. Unfortunately, a water station without water. The well is going down for very deep actually, so for environmental and also hygienic reasons, but they need fuel, and they don't have fuel, and that's why these water stations were without water. As mentioned, the people just went to the river Nestatak, and the people who couldn't do it by its own, they relied on services like that. This is a tank on these little carriage, or you want to call it. So some of the refugees are going to the river, taking the water, and then sometimes they take it for their community, or they just sell it, like also on the next page or the next slide. You see also young men with jerry cans doing the same thing, and you see also a donkey again. Donkeys are very popular in Ethiopia because it's you can see thousands here. It's a very affordable way to to do some of the job, like here carrying this carriage with the water. But again, this is the water from the river. You can take a shower of it with that. I did it every day. You can wash your clothes with that. I did it every day. But to drink that is actually not a good idea. Sure, I had water bottles brought from Addis Ababa. What can a refugee do? Next slide, please. So what we see here is also a small store actually, and you see the shelves are even full. This is not normal actually, but some refugees are also try to make small businesses. You see that in every refugee camp. The things you can buy there are very cheap actually. Sorry, I have to say that, no offense, but of course the refugees do not have money. But this is of course also a target of for the looters to break in these stores. Next slide, please. It's not working, or is it just my slow internet? Yeah, that was our presence here. You see the little girl on the right, and this with the orange shirt, and her even more little sister on her back. The children are very shy actually, but they're also curious, of course. And when they see UNHCR's back, they really hope that now the supplies are coming back. This was an assessment mission. So you see our car there in the back. It's not a WFP truck, unfortunately. I think they were greeted with much more cheering. But at least we could give the refugees a little hope. And many of us said, good that you are back, and hopefully you are back for good now. The next slide, please. You see also not very masked on these photos because, this is a very, very difficult situation. This is school, looks nice, but I made the photo with a fence here because the schools are still closed, and there's no access for the children. First they were closed for Corona, and when it was planned to reopen that, then the conflict started. The next slide, please. But of course the education is very important. This is one of the streets in the camp. It's not really beautiful. It's not really a Champs-Élysées. At least most of the refugees can live in houses from stone, normally built on their own. So these are not the refugee camps, from the news, or the refugee tents, the white UNHCR tents, from the news. There are some refugees. Most of them arrived in the last years, but there are some who are living there for about 20 years, and some even told us that they arrived in years that started with the 19. So it's really a prolonged refugee situation. The next slide, please. I think it's probably the last or almost the last. This is also another colleague of mine talking to the young people in the camp, because more than 40% of the refugees are younger than 25, and many are children. And of course, they're asking what a kind of future they have. The children, they are actually in a very good mood. They are happy. They have probably no idea what will come in their life. But the younger people, they ask what kind of future they can have. The next slide, please. And I think this is the last one then. No, it's not. Oh yeah, okay. This is probably also an important. The Ukrainian refugees, most of them are also Orthodox. So they built a church. You can see it, please, next slide. The church there. This is also, of course, very important for the refugees. I just want to show you this as an impression, how the life also could be in a refugee camp. This is a little Orthodox church, and the plastic bottles you see here in the foreground, this is a chimney actually, so that the wind makes some noise, some music probably. On the next slide,
maybe we should stop here with the because we've got quite a clear.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Because of the fact that we are running a little bit late. Thank
Excuse
you.
me. Of course.
No, it's not. You've given us a very interesting picture of how a refugee camp can be organized. And these are the ones that have been in place for some time, not the tented camps that you would see in some other parts, of course. Thank you so much. We have been receiving a number of questions. However, many of them boils down to the fact that we have little information about what is going on in Tigray and what are the sources of information that can be built on. Some of the audience is very well aware of the different fractions in Ethiopia, but the big challenge today is to get access. You described it, Chris, and Paul and Jason has done the same. So if is there any way that you can just briefly, any of you, explain what you do to try to understand the situation in terms of judging what is what comes out or as sometimes atrocities from different sides. If there is a mixing to this conflict by external troops, such as from Eritrea, and so on and so forth. Would you want to say something about that, Chris? Or
yeah, very briefly, it is very difficult to receive information. That's why this assessment mission to the two southern camps was so important for us. When it comes to the northern camps, we do not have much information. We even ask embassies here in Addis if they can provide probably satellite pictures, and we received some. The problem with the atrocities you mentioned is, or not a problem, let's say it in another way, is we have to take care for the refugees and also for the internal displaced persons. The other thing, this is just not our mandate. This have others to decide. Imagine this is a car accident, and we are the guys with the ambulance to help the people who are injured. Whose fault it is, that's a matter of police, but again, we are the guys with the ambulance.
That's a good explanation, I think. Would Paul want to say something about how you you're able to assess information despite the fact that there is lack of it?
Well, we've got about 25 staff who have been in Mekelle since the start of the crisis. So they are able to give us some information. Unfortunately, we do have a satellite communication link. In other parts of the region, there is no information. There's no mobile telephone network even now. It's a struggle. There's no internet access. So the amount of information we're getting from other parts of the region is to southern Tigray, to the refugee camps. But we haven't been able to reach most of the areas of Tigray. We have had some assessment missions that have managed to get in part of the way, but even they have been turned back as well. And even the government, which is providing food to IDPs through the NDRMC, the National Disaster Risk Management Commission, all areas, they have managed to reach some areas by going in with they would like to reach because of ongoing and we can't pretend that we have an accurate picture on what is going on. But what we can say is that there's a very large response required from the humanitarian community. For example, in the food sector, the government has endorsed the regional figure of, you know, approximately 3 million additional people who need food assistance in the region. These will be assisted by the government and the NGOs that are working in the region, but it will be a very difficult task because even though resources are partly secured, the access is still a huge problem, both for the NGOs, both for the government, and also for the UN.
As a follow-up to that, Paul, in many areas where with humanitarian crisis and in a conflict situation, including such as food distribution in the Yemen, there is always a question of how can you reach, despite all the sophisticated logistics that WFP depend upon. Is there anything you can say about how you control that the food and humanitarian assistance that is brought in actually comes to the people you are intended? Hello, Paul? I think you're...
Sorry,
yes, no, you were muted. Yes.
I'm not sure if my connection or yours, but I couldn't hear what your question was. You mentioned in the Yemen, for example.
Well, how you
I can see you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. The question was, how does WFP ensure that the deliveries of the emergency assistance comes to the intended population? And what would you do if you cannot make sure that it reaches?
Yeah. Can I just go back to a central point that I made in my presentation? For the relief distributions, the responsibility under the one warrior, one operator principle with the government. For the refugee operation for which we are responsible, we work with UNHCR to have monitors at the camps to ensure the food goes to the right people. In normal times, we use biometric fingerprint registration to identify the registered households. I think I can say on behalf of the NGOs that are working in Tigray that they do have established methods to make sure the food goes to the right people. And it must be also said that the large NGO REST, despite it having close links with the former leadership of the region, REST is being allowed to continue to recognize the fact that the relief operation, the humanitarian operations in Tigray are highly dependent on the facility that REST offers in most of Tigray region. Okay,
thank you very much. I wonder if we could, since time is running out, I would like to give you, all of you, each of you, a short wrapping up of this seminar, which has attracted a lot of interest from the audience. Many questions. We cannot take all of them, but we have touched upon the most important areas which the questions are raising. So can I ask you, Jason, if you have a final word to wrap up this session?
Thank you. I think these last questions have sort of gone to the heart of the crisis, which is, is obviously acute and causing massive suffering. But the blackout of telecommunications and internet, the lack of access for most media has really hampered a clear sense of what's going on the ground. And I think even you can just see from the little microcosm of our comment section that depending on the personal view of whoever is speaking and who their personal network is, they'll have heard some things from people they know in the region or people that know someone who knows someone. And this is a real challenge. So the variety of actors that are rumored to be involved. We haven't even talked about some of the potential regional destabilization beyond Ethiopia itself. There's obviously refugees in Tigray, but if the Eritrean army presence is when the extent of that is confirmed, there's questions about the degree to which this dispute about Western Tigray, Amhara region, the border with Sudan, the refugees, there's many fault lines. You could connect this then to the Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Nile waters. Things get messy very quickly. So the sooner access is restored, the sooner independent voices and independent documentation can start to get in there, the more we'll be able to sort of be operating with our eyes open. At the moment, it's a lot of speculation, a lot of guesswork, and you can be more or less informed at that. But I think for that reason, it's really important to try to keep back as an analyst and as an outside observer, and for those of us that want to see Ethiopia succeed and try to help and focus on the bigger picture. So I would then steer us back towards this point that what Ethiopia really needs is a comprehensive national conversation about the way forward.
Yeah.
It's much bigger than Tigray.
Thank you very much. Chris, would you like to have a few minutes of a final wrap up?
Not even 1 minute, actually, because so much is said and so many interesting things from Jason and Paul. The situation is really difficult in that country, and the conflict. If you don't believe that there's a conflict also in the society, just take a look in our comment section. Then you will see that it's not easy to go with a cool head just into this situation. For us, it's very important. Access. We need access to go there. We, by the way, have also still our national staff in Tigray, in Shire, but we need access to the 4 refugee camps. Now we have only for 2 refugee camps half an access, and to the other, not only this. Of course, it might be a dangerous situation, but we are used to it, and we want to go up north there to help these people, because there are tens of thousands of people, many of them children. For them, every hour counts, actually, and that's why I really say it again, we need access to help these people.
Thank you. Paul, would you want to have a last word on as a wrapping up of this session?
Thank you. I've just got my connection back. I think this is well summarized by Chris there. The access is the most important issue, but the access is not easy because it is not a series of fronts that is causing the insecurity. There isn't really a set of different territories, as I think many of the observers outside think. So the access will be very complex to negotiate. We have not stopped in terms of trying to make sure that we can get to places. There are some places that can be accessed at the moment, but there are certain places that are really out of bounds at the present time. We will continue to work with the authorities, and it has to be said that the interim government at the Mekelle level is really urging that there is more attempts to make to get outside Mekelle itself. There are some relief operations going on inside Mekelle, but that's obviously not enough. There are some additional areas where the additional refugees are arriving that can be accessed, but it's really not enough. It's all about humanitarian access, but moreover, having it peaceful enough so that there is access agreed.
Thank you very much. It's an important point to also state that the UN is not the party to the conflict, but is there to provide assistance on the terms that are possible. Suffering and protection is part of the humanitarian crisis and the needs of the people, not the least also shelter, food, water and sanitation, etc. So in fact, the conflict is still ongoing. It broke out in 2020, and we, as the representing in a certain way United Nations, we hope to see a national solution. Analysts like Jason Mosley is following the situation, and so is the international press, not always either with the possibility of getting access to information. And information is about the first victim of any crisis, isn't it? I want to thank all of our expert presenters for their insight into this crisis in Tigray. And from our side, we also like to thank the audience for their interest and excellent comments all along the seminar. Thank you. And pardon? Yeah, we want to thank it's from the Stockholm United Nations Association, and from the Stockholm Association of Foreign Affairs, which is the organizer of this seminar. Thank you very much for your attention, and look forward to see you again on another occasion on another subject. Thank you.